Hey home stars, in last week's video, weekend workshop, we made a lovely crate. This weekend, we're making an insert for our crate. Now, in order to make our one panel insert, we're gonna need some measurements. And not only are we gonna make it from one panel, but we're gonna use French seams, which means that by the end of making the insert, we will be able to flip it inside out because both sides are going to be free of any raw edges, right? So let's start measuring. We're going to do the length first. And since my sides here are so thick, I'm going to start on top and I'm going to wrap this down and go across and go up. That's 29.5 inches. Now we're going to need to add increments, right? So the first increment we're going to need to add is the overlap, because our insert is going to come up and come over, right? So I am thinking I want to add an inch overlap, which means that for two sides, I'm going to need to add 2 inches. So this is plus 2 equals 31.5 inches. Then we're going to need to add increments for our double hem, right? And our double hem that we're going to use is 1/2 inch, which means that if it's a double hem and it's 1/2 inch, we're going to turn and turn again. So 2 times 1/2 is 1. So we'll need to add 1 inch. That is 32.5 inches. Now we are going to be using French seams. And so for our seam allowance, we're going to go ahead and we're going to add another. If we were just doing a regular seam, we could add an 1/2 inch for each corner. That would be 2 inches, right? But because we are using French seams, we want to make sure we have enough fabric at the corners to do our French seams. So I'm going to say add 1 inch for each corner. The increments that I'm adding here, maybe you will need to make adjustments to them depending on the makeup of your crate or your basket, right? So we're going to go ahead and we're going to add 4 inches for our French seams. So that is 32 and 4, 36.5 inches. Now let's do our width. I'm going to start on the top. And I'm going to measure down, measure across, and measure up. And that's 20.25 inches. Okay, so the same increments that we added to our length, we're going to add them to our width. So that's 2 inches for the overlap. That's 22.25 plus 1 inch for our hem. That's 23.25 plus 4 inches for our seams, our French seams. So that's 27.25 inches. Now, what we're going to do is go ahead and cut a piece of fabric from the fabric I have on the table. That's going to be 36.5 inches long and 27¼ inches wide. I'm going to take my length this way. I have already squared up the side of my fabric panel. So I'm going to go ahead and measure 36½. And here we go. My chalk, that's 36½ here. And this end, I am going to measure 36½ also. And I am going to, while I'm doing this, because I don't want to draw the line where I don't need to draw it, I'm going to go ahead and measure while I'm drawing my line. So my width is going to be 27¼ So I'll line this up by my marks, and my 27¼ is right here. So I'm going to start from right here, and I'm going to draw back down, right? And now I'm going to go over here, and I'm going to measure 27¼ Here we go. Gonna mark. Then I am gonna go across here. I'm gonna pull this towards me so I can see a little better. So let's see. Here and here. So I'll draw right across. Okay, so now I'll go ahead and cut, because these are my cutting lines that I just drew. Okay, this is our panel we're going to be working with. For our next step in making our liner insert, we are going to cut out the 4 corners of this fabric panel. But how do we know how much to cut out? Let's do this. We are going to take our crate again, and we are going to measure inside our crate from end to end. We could do the length or we could do the width. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do the length. Now this is 17½ inches. So what we're going to do is take our 17½ inches, and we're using the length here. So it is going to be 36½ subtract 17½ inches. Because we already have 2 halves, we're just going to get rid of the 2 halves, right? And now we need to take 17 from 36. We can borrow a 1 over here and take it over here. And this is 9. So that's 19 inches. Right? Now this 19 inches is what we're going to use for the corners. However, when we measured from here to here, we have 2 corners, right? So that 19 inches, we need to divide into 2. So divide 19 inches into 2 and we get 2 nines are 18. So divided by 2, 9.5 inches. However, we are not quite ready to cut out those corners yet, right? Because this 9.5 inches would just give us our finished measurements. However, we need to account for our side hems. We allowed 4 inches for all 4 corners, which means that we allowed an inch for each corner. So what we're going to do is go ahead and subtract the 1 inch we allowed for each corner. So we have 8.5 inches. So 8.5 inches is what we're going to be measuring to cut out of the corners. We have our fabric panel folded in 2 halves here. So when we cut here, we'll be cutting 2 corners. We cut here, we'll be cutting 2 corners. Be careful. Don't be cutting on the inside if you fold your fabric. So let's go ahead and measure 8.5 inches from the corner here. We're going to do 8.5 inches. Then we are going to do 8.5 inches this way and 8.5 inches this way. Now what we're aiming for is to have 2 lines intersecting at this point on both sides, right? So what I'm going to do is use my straight edge and I'm going to line it up with my 2 marks. Now I don't need to draw the line all the way across. I'm just going to guesstimate where the intersection is going to be, and I'm going to stop my line right there. And the same thing on this side. Now I can take my measuring tape and measure 8.5 inches. There we go. And I'll do the same thing here, 8.5 inches. Then I'll go ahead and connect my mark. Then I will do the same thing on this side. Now it's time to cut out the corners. And I would suggest that instead of cutting on the inside of your mark, you either cut on the outside or cut directly on top of it. So when we're done cutting and we open our fabric panel, this is what it looks like. Now it's time for us to go ahead and stitch our corners together. So we'll just bring the corners together like so and stitch. Now because we're doing a French seam to lock all our raw edges in, we are going to put the fabric together on the right side first. And stitch. Now I will be stitching here just about 1/4 of an inch in from the edge. Okay, so now we're done the four corners. We are going to flip the insert. And now we are going to stitch the corners on the wrong side. And the idea here is, as I said before, to seal all the raw edges. Therefore, we are going to stitch in just about under a half an inch from the edge, because we don't want any raw edges to be seen after we're done. There we go. So this is the inside of our insert and this is the outside. But see how we've encased the raw edges? So it doesn't matter what side it's on, you won't see any raw edges. So now we need to finish off with our 1/2 inch double hem. And we're going to turn this way. I'm just going to use my little gadget here, measuring gauge, and I'm going to measure as I go. So it's a 1/2 inch. I'll measure 1/2 inch, fold again, and start stitching. Okay. So I fold and measure 1/2 inch, and then I fold again, and then I just smooth out the rest and stitch. And I keep doing that until I am done. We are done stitching our insert, and we can go ahead and put it in our crate. There we go. Go. There we go. There we go. And just like that, we have a fitted insert for our crate. If this video was helpful to you, go ahead, let me hear it in comments below. Also, hit that like button and share. My name is Valerie, and I enjoy sharing with you to help you to make your home comfy, cozy, and complete with simple and affordable DIY projects. I will see you again soon. Mwah.